In 1802, Robert Witterell, captain of the Obra Dinn, makes plans to sail from London to the Orient, around the southern cape of Africa towards Formosa or modern-day Taiwan. The crew of 60 includes Captain Witterell, his wife, his steward, 4 mates and their stewards, a boatswain, a carpenter, a gunner, and a surgeon, each with their individual mate, 3 midshipmen, 10 topmen, 15 seamen, 7 passengers including 4 Formosans, a purser, a butcher, a cook, the ship's helmsman, the ship's steward, and artist Edward Spratt. The ship leaves from London in 1802, stopping in Falmouth to take on supplies for the journey. The Formosans also bring aboard a tall chest containing a glowing shell, which is guarded at all times. While the ship is loaded in Falmouth, supervised by seaman Lars Lind, a rope snaps, dropping the cargo on seaman Samuel Peters, brother of Nathan Peters, killing him. A stowaway who is attempting to come aboard in the cargo is also killed when the cargo comes loose. Once loaded, the ship sails southwest, past Portugal. Indian seaman Syed Solomon comes down with a lung disease and passes away in his hammock. His shipmate, Renford Rajub, shows signs of the disease soon after and is examined by surgeon Henry Evans, who confirms it's not tuberculosis and that it's not contagious. Evans prescribes opium, but Renford also succumbs to the illness despite Dr. Evans' help. The ship sails further south past the Canary Islands. Second mate Edward Nichols, intrigued by the Formosan chest, plots to steal the contents. He breaks into the cargo hold, knocking out Huk Sang Lao, one of the Formosan guards, and opens the chest, revealing a shell. He's interrupted by Italian passenger Nunzio Pasqua, who notices the unconscious Huk Sang Lao. Nichols stabs Pasqua to cover up his attempt, then flees, leaving Pasqua to die. With no other witnesses, Huk Sang Lao is accused and found guilty of Pasqua's murder by Captain Witterell, and sentenced to die by execution. Despite pleas from Bun Nan Lim, Lao is executed by firing squad while the remaining crew watch. Artist Edward Spratt sketches the scene for the Justice at Sea drawing. Nichols again plots to steal the shell, convincing several crew members to assist him. Together, they kidnap Bun Lan Lim and It Bing Xia along with the Formosan chest, attempting to flee with them in the lifeboats to the nearby Canary Islands. The group is discovered, and topman Timothy Buteman attempts to stop the party, but is shot by Nichols, who escapes with the shell and the hostages. Far from the Obra Dinn, with Xia and Lim tied up, the group is attacked by mermaids. Li Hong is hit with a spear by the mermaids, who surround the 2 lifeboats. Patrick O'Hagan is hit in the neck with a spear, and Alarkus Nishkin is pulled into the water. It Bing Xia manages to cut himself free on one of the spears, then makes for the chest, stabbing Nichols' steward Samuel Galligan in the neck with a knife dropped by Nikshin. The mermaids pull Alexei Toporov overboard and claw Bun Nan Lim in the throat, while Xia takes the shell from the drawer and puts it in the liquid at the top part of the chest. This releases several flaming columns, stunning the mermaids. The columns burn off It Bing Xia's arms and he passes away, along with Lim. Edward Nichols, the only survivor, pulls the 3 stunned mermaids, each with an additional shell, into the lifeboat, then returns to the Obra Dinn. When he arrives, the only surviving Formosan on the Obra Dinn, Chiu Tan, shoots Nichols before he has a chance to explain himself. The mermaids, the bodies, the shells, and the chest are hauled back on board, and Chiu Tan is brought in front of Captain Witterell for questioning, with topman Huang Li acting as interpreter. Tan declares that the shell must be protected or the crew will die. One of the mermaids being hauled onto the deck unexpectedly shoots spikes, killing Tan and seaman Hamado Diom. Another mermaid is being carried into the hold, when cook Thomas Sefton jokes about eating it, before being fatally struck by the mermaid's tail while he inspects the shell it carries. The sudden movement causes the seamen to lose their footing, falling down the stairs into the hold and crushing seaman William Wassom's neck between the stretcher and the bulkhead. The 3 mermaids and the Formosan chest are locked in the lazarette, but the captain's steward Philip Dahl, fearing a curse from the mermaid, attacks seaman John Naples in a panic, cutting off his leg. Naples succumbs to his injuries despite assistance from surgeon Henry Evans, and Dahl is locked in the lazarette with the mermaids. Dahl manages to break free and open the chest, but is burned to death by the mercury-like liquid. With a third of his crew now dead, Captain Witterell orders the ship turned around to head back to England. A storm rolls in as the ship heads back, and 2 hooded figures riding giant crabs climb aboard the ship in search of the mermaids and the shells. Topman Huang Li is struck by lightning as the 2 figures board, and Nicholas Bottarelli is speared by one of the riders. Fourth mate John Davies raises the alarm as the crab riders descend below deck. Carpenter's mate Marcus Gibbs confronts one of the riders as they enter the gun deck, throwing an axe, which the crab easily deflects before fatally spiking Gibbs. The other crab rider decapitates surgeon's mate James Wallace and topman Jay Zhang as it makes its way towards the lower decks, then maims the ship's steward Zungi Sathi, hitting him in the torso with spikes. Midshipman Charles Herstick throws a lantern at the rider, setting it on fire and killing it, but also burning himself to death in the process. Meanwhile, the first rider spikes butcher Emil O'Farrell to the wall, who dies shortly after despite assistance from Dr. Evans. The rider invades the orlop deck, heading for the lazarette, when seaman Charles Miner opens fire, missing the rider and accidentally hitting and killing Zungi Sathi, who'd taken cover on the far side of the port walk. Carpenter Winston Smith lures the rider down to the cargo hold, and as he wrestles with it is stabbed several times, but manages to shoot it, killing the rider and the crab before Smith passes away. Following the crab rider attack, purser Duncan McKay and seamen Alexander Booth and Nathan Peters hatch a plan to escape the Obra Dinn by stealing a lifeboat. Lars Lind attempts to join them, but is clubbed to death by Peters, who believes Lind is responsible for the earlier cargo incident that killed his brother. Unbeknownst to Peters and the escaping crew, the mermaids have summoned a kraken, which begins to attack the ship, crushing artist Edward Spratt to death while he uses the head. The crew begins to fight off the kraken with swords and cannons, and seaman Abraham Akbar is crushed by a tentacle while lighting a cannon. Another tentacle grabs gunner Christian Wolfe and holds him against the lit muzzle of the cannon, while seaman George Shirley attempts in vain to free him before both are killed by the firing cannon. This dislodges another cannon, crushing the third mate's steward Roderick Anderson. Midshipman Thomas Lank and Peter Milroy head to the main deck with cartridge bags to use against the kraken, but Milroy is grabbed by a tentacle before he can throw the lit cartridge and it explodes. The kraken begins grabbing the crew, throwing topman Omid Gould and helmsman Finlay Dalton into the sea, ripping topman Maba in half, dragging topman Wei Lee and bosun's mate Charles Miner overboard, and overturning the lifeboat with the escaping McKay, Booth, and Peters. Bosun Alfred Klestel has his arm ripped off fighting a tentacle, while the captain's wife, Abigail Hoscott Witterell, comes out on deck looking for the captain before she's crushed by a falling piece of the mast. Captain Witterell enters the lazarette with the trapped mermaids and demands they call off the kraken, shooting one mermaid then stabbing the other, before the last remaining mermaid calls off the kraken, which leaves as the storm dissipates. As the remaining crew recover from the attack, third mate Martin Perrault comes to the lazarette to set the last mermaid free with the shells, but is spiked by the spooked mermaid. Perrault's steward Davy James and first mate steward Paul Moss give the mermaid a shell to calm it down, then begin carrying it away. As they leave, a dying Perrault asks that the mermaids see the Obra Dinn safely back to England, and the pair dump the mermaid and the remaining shells back into the sea. Henry Evans later returns to the now locked lazarette and lets his monkey in through the window before killing it, knowing that the East India Company will likely use a time watch to review the events of the ship and will need a way to access the bodies in the lazarette now that the key is gone. Following the kraken fight, bosun Alfred Klestel is taken down below by fourth mate John Davies and gunner's mate Bolus Wyatter. Klestel succumbs to blood loss from his missing limb, but casts suspicion on Captain Witterell and his role in calling off the kraken. Meanwhile, Dr. Evans, along with passengers Emily Jackson, Jane Bird, fourth mate steward Davy James, and first mate steward Paul Moss, attempt to escape on the last remaining boat. They're spotted by topman Leonid Volkov, who stabs Moss in the heart despite an order from Captain Witterell to let them go. Volkov then attempts to board the fleeing boat, but is shot by Emily Jackson. One deck below, Wyatter and Davies, fed up with the tragedy, begin plotting to mutiny and take the ship east to sell the mermaids and the shells, not knowing that the only remaining mermaid has been put back in the sea along with the shells. They're overheard by midshipman Thomas Lank, who alerts the crew to the mutiny plan. Wyatter stabs Lank in the back as he attempts to flee, but Davies intervenes. In the ensuing struggle to take Wyatter's gun, it goes off, killing Wyatter. First mate William Hoscott and seaman Henry Brennan hear the commotion and come down to investigate. Hoscott follows after the wounded Lank, who is crawled to the midshipman cabin, while Brennan, believing Wyatter's death to be intentional, clubs John Davies, killing him. Hoscott finds Thomas Lank bleeding in the midshipman's cabin, but is unable to help him. At this point, only 4 crew members are left alive: Hoscott and Brennan, topman Lewis Walker, and Captain Witterell. Captain Witterell locks himself in his cabin, and the other crew begin attempting to force their way in, believing the captain still has more shells. The captain opens the door and shoots William Hoscott in the neck, killing him. While Walker sneaks around to the rear of the captain's cabin, Brennan confronts the captain, demanding to know the whereabouts of the remaining shells. The captain informs Brennan that they were dumped overboard, and a fight ensues. Captain Witterell is stabbed in the shoulder, but manages to cut Brennan's throat in the struggle. Lewis Walker surprises the captain, stabbing him in the side, but he manages to club Walker in the head. The wounded captain, now the only surviving member of the crew, goes to the body of his now deceased wife, confessing to having killed her brother, William Huscott. Overcome with grief, the captain takes his own life. The Mermaid, having been returned to the ocean with the remaining shell, guides the unmanned Obra Dinn back to Falmouth in 1807. An East India Company insurance inspector is tasked with determining the fate of the crew. The inspector is provided a book from Henry Evans containing crew pictures and a memento mortem, which allows the inspector to view the moment of death for any dead body found on the ship. Following inspection, the Obra Dinn sinks in a storm. The inspector sends the report to the East India Company and returns the book to Dr. Evans in Africa. Evans passes away a year later due to illness, and Jane Bird, one of the surviving passengers, mails a letter to the inspector containing the monkey's paw from the lazarette, along with Dr. Evans' book. This allows the inspector to see the final fate of Philip Dahl, Martin Perrault, and 2 of the 3 mermaids, finishing Dr. Evans' book and completing the story of the Obra Dinn.